The stupidest man in our country is the president, and he is inflicting the lack of brain power that he has on our economy. The stock market is crashing as every indicator points to recession. People are worried to spend their money because they don't know if they're going to have it next month. Donald Trump is destroying our economy with his stupidity, which is why it was so therapeutic to hear one of the smartest people we have ever had serve in the office of President of the United States rip him to shreds. Yes, former President Barack Obama delivered a scathing rebuke of Donald Trump and not only his tariff disaster, but his attacks on what is most fundamentally important in this country in a clip I am excited to show you. But before we get into it, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button. It goes a long way, and it really does mean a lot to me. Now let's listen to President Obama.
This has to do with something more precious, which is, who are we as a country and what values do we stand for? And now, this is not just an abstraction, and I think this is one of the challenges that we have. And I saw this even before the last election. I think people tend to think, democracy, rule of law, independent judiciary, freedom of the press, that's all abstract stuff because it's not affecting the price of eggs. Well, you know what? It's about to affect the price of eggs. One of the things that has distinguished us in the past has been this basic idea that we are a rules-based society. What that means is that, you know what, I can support one candidate instead of another, and I don't have to worry that the police are going to come harass me or my customers. That's what happens in other places. That's what happens in Russia. We take for granted the idea that we don't have to pay bribes or hire somebody's cousin in order to get a business permit. That's how we built the economy we did. That's why this place worked. And it has very concrete impacts on all of our lives. So, this is the first time I've been speaking publicly for a while. I've been watching a little bit. Yeah. Let me just close this portion of my remarks by saying it is up to all of us to fix this. It's not going to be because somebody comes and saves you. The most important office in this democracy is the citizen, the ordinary person who says, no, that's not right. And I do think one of the reasons that our commitment to democratic ideals has eroded is that we got pretty comfortable and complacent. You know, it has been easy during most of our lifetimes to say you are a progressive, or say you are for social justice, or say you're for free speech, and not have to pay a price for it. And now we're at one of those moments where, you know what, it's not enough just to say you're for something. You may actually have to do something and possibly sacrifice a little bit. So, yeah, if you're a law firm being threatened, you might have to say, okay, we will lose some business because we're going to stand for a principle. If you are a university, you may have to say, figure out, are we in fact doing things right? Have we in fact violated our own values, our own code, violated the law in some fashion? If not, and you're just being intimidated, well, you should be able to say, well, that's why we got this big endowment. We'll stand up for what we believe in, and then we'll pay our researchers for a while out of that endowment, and we'll give up the extra wing or the fancy gymnasium that we can delay that for a couple of years, because academic freedom might be a little more important. For most of human history, and to this day in most of places in the world, there is a cost to challenging the powers that be, particularly if they're abusing that power. And this idea, and I've noticed this among some wealthier folks who, after George Floyd, they were right there, and a bunch of companies were talking about how they cared about diversity and they wanted to do this and they were all for that, and they are mute right now. But what that tells me is it was okay when it was cool and trendy, and when it's not so much. And that, I think, is what we have to, each of us has to examine in our own hearts. Is all right, we say we're for equality. Are we willing to fight for it? Are we going to risk something for it? We say that we're for rule of law. Are we going to stick to that when it's tough, not when it's easy? We believe in freedom of speech. Do we stand up for freedom of speech when the other person talking is saying stuff that infuriates us and is wrong and hurtful? Do we still believe in it?
I think President Obama hit on something that is really important in this conversation about how Democrats need to be messaging, and that's authenticity and honesty. It's kind of the opposite of what Gavin Newsom is doing right now, thinking he has to cave to the right wing by bringing them on his podcast, Steve Bannon, Charlie Kirk, MAGA radio host, and then what? Trashing trans athletes is his idea of how to win back voters. That's not the case. Lead with your values. Tim Walz put it perfectly. These attacks on kids who just want to play sports with their friends, they're weird. Get out of our business. It's none of yours. If you care about equality, fight for it. Don't just talk about it. Gavin Newsom has been the perfect example of this, and I don't want to get into any more of him, but people don't like Democrats grandstanding and talking down to them and then not living up to the ideals that they claim to espouse. They want fighters like Jasmine Crockett and AOC, Bernie Sanders, people who stand by and act on what they actually believe in. That this fight is as important as they claimed it to be. When you say this fight is important and then shy away from it, you're not a real fighter. And we need real fighters right now. One of those real fighters was actually out walking the walk. That was Jamie Raskin. This clip right here.
Over here. So the federal courts have been very emphatic that the basic rules of the civil service cannot be dismantled for some other agenda. For example, tens of thousands of federal employees have lost their jobs simply because they were in the probationary category. They were probationary employees not because they had done anything wrong, but because they either had just been hired recently or they'd been promoted because they had performed in an excellent way in their prior jobs. The courts have struck that down and restored those people, although shamefully in some federal departments they're saying that they will pay those people, but they won't allow them to work. But in any event, that is not a way around the civil service. Another way around the civil service that doesn't work is to simply describe someone as a DEI hire or a DEI employee. That is not a federal category by which anybody gets hired. And so that has also been a way to try to circumvent the rules of the civil service, but the courts have said no. Under the civil service, people can only be hired for their own poor performance or professional misconduct. And unfortunately, we've been seeing thousands of federal workers who have excellent performance evaluations who've been fired. So I don't know what's taken place in the last several days at the Department of Education, and we're going to have to look into that. And obviously, the workers, and if they have representation, those people will be focused on that. But you know, the forces that are saying that this is being done in a lawless way are winning in court every day. So in terms of programs, obviously Congress adopted a lot of the programs we're talking about, like college student loans or like Title VI or Title I, contemplating that they would be part of the Department of Education. And so to the extent that they're being stripped and relocated to other parts of the federal government, that would have to conform to federal statute. And it may or it may not. We don't really understand what the policy purpose is, and a lot of people fear that it is a part of a program to dismantle not just the Department of Education, but the federal commitment to education. Exactly. So we are going to be zealously watching that to make sure that those programs that the Congress of the United States, the people's representatives, have adopted are effectuated by this department or some other department. We are going to make sure, for example, as Congresswoman Wilson says, that the civil rights commitments that we've adopted are secure. And we're just afraid that they want to replace the civil rights commitment of the federal government with a war on DEI. And those two things don't fit together.
Not every Democrat needs to do 25 straight hours of standing like Cory Booker. I don't think probably any other Democrat could do 25 straight hours of standing and speaking. That is an incredible feat that we saw from Senator Cory Booker. But what every Democrat can do is stand up a couple of times, talk for a few hours, make their voice heard, use their power in opposition as often as you can. Go and do the work. We need more of that. This moment is calling us to it. I feel like too many Democrats have shied away. Of course, we are always uplifting the ones on this channel who are in the fight, but we need more of them. Cory Booker said when I spoke to him after he got off the Senate floor that this is a movement moment. There is the energy for a movement. Let's make it happen. That's what we're doing on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button, leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.